Did we go to the moon or not? I've been looking into this week, and a key clue is the Apollo 11 landing images. I mean, how good do they look? Well, I'll tell you how good they look. Too good. Let's get suspicious. NASA had been taking cameras up to space for a while. This image, for example, was taken by the astronaut John Glenn in 1962, the first time a handheld camera had been included in the spacecraft equipment list. But the gulf in quality between Glenn's images and the images taken on Apollo 11 is so vast that it presents clear evidence that these photos were in fact taken on Earth in a studio environment set up by Stanley Kubrick. So what's really going on here? Glenn's images were taken on an Ansco Auto set, a camera he bought for $40 at a Florida drugstore. Until now, photography had been a fairly low priority for astronauts, with their primary concern being actually operating the spacecraft, which is understandable. But as the Apollo program loomed, NASA decided that photography would need to become a key part of the mission.
When the United States was about to send some of its most adventurous citizens on journeys that man had never before taken, it was evident that these adventurers should be given the necessary equipment to make a clear pictorial record of what they saw, a record unmarred by the vagaries of memory.
Essentially, what I think they're saying here is, let's take this seriously now, because there's only a certain number of times you can send someone up there to space and have them come back and ask, what was it like? And they just go, yeah, it was amazing, before you get fed up. It's sort of like when someone you know has been to Australia for 3 months and they're telling you about their experience. Yes, I can listen to you, but if you are able to throw in a picture of you with an alligator every now and again, then it will help me to stay engaged. As part of taking photography more seriously on these missions, it was recognised that the optics of modern photographic systems are essentially film limited in their capability. That is, the amount of information that can be recorded is determined by the ultimate performance of the film rather than by the lens. Thus, improvement in total information content may be achieved by simply increasing the size of the film used to record the image. Here NASA decides to make the move from 35mm to medium format photography for the Apollo missions. And here comes the Hasselblad 500EL. Welcome to the big time. Units needed to withstand a temperature range from minus 186 to plus 144 degrees centigrade. So the camera bodies were painted silver to reflect radiation and heat energy. Also, the waist level viewfinders were ditched in favour of a simple custom sidefinder that could be aimed while wearing a helmet and visor. Finally, a pistol grip and a custom high capacity film magazine were fitted for ease of use with the space gloves. So essentially, the Apollo 11 landing images look good because NASA made photography a priority and invested in some high quality cameras. I can get my head around that. What I can't get my head around is that Neil Armstrong is a really good pilot. He's essentially selected to go to the moon for that reason. But when he gets up there, all of a sudden he's just managed to find time to become a professional photographer as well. What's going on there? Well, in the documentary Apollo Astronauts Training NASA's Moon Men, it explains that Armstrong and his colleagues' preparation was not solely spacecraft based. The crew learned, for example, what to do if they crash landed in a jungle and had to survive there for a few days. They had extensive photography training, and they also spent a lot of time with the geologists looking at rocks. Essentially, it seems like they all just went on a supercharged Diamond Duke of Edinburgh award and covered many bases, one of those key bases being photographic training. Astronauts were encouraged to take training cameras on trips to become more familiar with the camera operation and to enhance their photographic technique. I like to imagine Neil Armstrong taking his Hasselblad on holiday and his wife's just there like, why have you brought that massive thing with you again, Neil? Bear in mind, he's got his big camera bracket mounted to his chest because that's how it's going to be when he's on the moon, and he's got his space gloves on as well, so you can get used to operating the buttons. Will you take those gloves off, Neil, because it's actually a really nice restaurant. Finally, I know I said Armstrong became a professional photographer when he got to the moon, and from the images we generally see, it does look like that, but the images we generally see are just the good ones. When you go through the Project Apollo archives, it turns out that Armstrong doesn't have a clue a lot of the time, and he took about 4 good photos. out of hundreds, and we just see those 4 over and over again. Now this all starts to make the Apollo 11 images seem more believable, but it doesn't disprove that they were taken on Earth. However, this last point is the keystone piece of evidence that supports NASA's claim that they did actually go to the lunar surface. The Apollo 11 lunar module landed with 2 cameras, but only one went outside, carried by Neil Armstrong. That explains why nearly every photograph of an astronaut on the surface during that first landing is of Buzz Aldrin. Scrambling to satisfy the world's media for photographs of the historic moonwalk, NASA suddenly discovered an embarrassing oversight. They started looking for the best shot of Armstrong. Soon, they were looking for any shot of Armstrong. This is the main reason I now believe these images were taken on the moon, because if this was Stanley Kubrick at the wheel, he's a professional. He would have followed his directorial instincts and got coverage of the scene. But Armstrong and Aldrin, in my opinion, were alone. They were 240,000 miles from Earth, and neither of them had much of a clue.